Hello, listeners! We are absolutely chuffed you've decided to join us. Grab a packet of biscuits, brew a warm cuppa, and curl up for a wholesome American conversation about quintessential British food from everyone's favourite baking competition. Please enjoy! Hats off to Bake Off, an amateur baking podcast.
Welcome to Hats Off to Bake Off, an amateur baking podcast. My name is Malory. I am here with my friend Nick, and as always, we will be baking and chatting our way through our favorite bits of the signature, technical, and showstopper of Episode 7 from Collection 1 and or Series 5 of the Great British Bake Off. So today we will be learning about the origin of the mysterious and unpronounceable Kouign Amann, and also walking through Nick and I's versions of this week's challenges. So, Nick, I know you were nervous about pastry week. How do you feel on the other side? That's valid.
Yeah. I can't say I like pastry. I'm still really bad at it. I would do it again, though.
I love pastry. I love all kinds of pastry. I think the technique is always really fun for me. One of my favorite parts of baking is that it's such a good stress reliever for me because I can just focus on every step of the process. And when something's more technical, whether it's like a lamination or if you're cooking the choux and like trying to add the right amount of egg, that sort of dedication and brain power you need to do it correctly is so almost relaxing for me, especially when it turns out well. It can get stressful, obviously, if your bake goes bad, but I could cook pastry forever. So
I definitely connect to that. Feeling the pastry and like rolling it out is a really nice, calming motion. So I get that.
Yeah. And I love that they did savory parcels as the first challenge because pastry is so versatile. It can be used in so many different ways. And so I really think they did a good job of sort of honoring its versatility in this episode. And it was fun to see savory parcels. I love this signature challenge. Is probably my favorite challenge always, every week, because I think I've said it before. It's something that I would actually usually make. That's something that my family has often made savory parcels for dinner before. It's a pretty common thing. And I just love that you get to see these new ideas, watch how the bakers do whatever flavors they're doing or whatever new techniques they're trying out. I don't know. I love it.
Good to start with something simple, something that's straightforward. People have known or make these all the time. And then go into something way more complex, as Bake Off always does. So starting off with something that's really simple or really down to earth is probably a good way to start.
Yeah, and I think they really embraced that this episode. It really felt like they were trying to give the bakers almost a moment of rest. I feel like the last few challenges last week was really difficult. There was a lot of new techniques going on. And so throwing them a savory parcels challenge was really an opportunity for them to take what they loved and run with it. And you heard Mary and Paul talk about that at the beginning of the episode. They were expecting pretty much perfection. They knew they were handing the bakers a really easy challenge and wanted to see how much they could shine given a fairly basic foundation.
I mean, that's always the terror at this late in the competition round, at this last 6 bakers. Everything they make has to be perfect, or else if they give you something that's simple, it has to be beautiful, or else you're just in the bottom. You're immediately at the bottom. You're not anywhere in the middle. You're either bottom or top. That's it. So if they give you something easy, you got to do it really, really well.
So that being said, did you have any favorites of this one?
I think my favorite was of the ones that I would probably want to eat was Martha's. She did a really good job. She got a lot of praise for her mini beef Wellingtons with a little mushroom duxelle and the Parma ham. And it's just a cute little thing. I thought it worked out really well. But I think one that I probably wouldn't eat, because I'm not sure if I'm even allergic to any of the things in this, but the kachori's that Chetna made looked so crispy and crunchy. It looked completely different than any other pastry the other bakers were making. So I was really impressed by that.
Yeah, those looked amazing to me, and I'm obsessed with lentils. So everything about that sounded delicious to me. And I also really liked Nancy's. The duck idea was really good. And then actually Richard's minted lamb sounded amazing to me.
Speaking of Nancy, she did that really cool thing where she put ground rice in the bottom of her pastry case, and that's such a genius idea.
Yes, to soak up the liquid that would theoretically spill out of the pastry, right?
So yeah, I think that's the idea that I'm guessing it's just ground uncooked rice, I would assume.
I'm
And
assuming
so
just rice flour.
it would it would soak up the liquid and almost become a cooked rice while you're baking it. And then you have that, you don't have a soggy bottom. You got to, what did you just say before recording?
May all your bottoms be crisp.
May all your bottoms be crispy. I love it. So that was a really good idea, and I kind of hope to do that at some point in the future if I ever make a savory parcel with fresh meat, which is terrifying.
I feel like I would so be Mel in this challenge, like when she was going around while they were judging and just like filling her pockets with savory parcels. There's something about savory parcels is like they're so scrumptious and such a good just like easy meal, easy lunch. It seems a little daunting because often you'll have to make the dough from scratch, but like you could throw them in the freezer, warm them up later. Like that's, I will literally always be down for any sort of like, whether they're patties, pasties, dumplings. I would eat them all.
But woof, what a rough time for Kate this week, because she tried frying her samosas and they did not cook and the fryer turned off, and I just felt really bad for her.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. You always have to feel bad whenever there's some sort of equipment failure. And I feel like Paul tried to say something at the end about, oh, you should have known better. And it's like they're working with new equipment that they don't have experience with. This isn't what she would be cooking with if she was in her own home.
I'm sure she would be, filling up a giant pot full of oil and then just cooking it there, but that might have taken a lot longer than using just a pre-made fryer. So I gotta wonder like why she decided to choose the more complicated fryer. So have you made savory parcels before? What would you make?
So I've made many a savory parcel. I grew up eating a lot of Indian food, and so I've made samosas before. I've made a lot of dumplings. My family has this tradition where every year for Christmas, we do a food from a different country for Christmas dinner. And so honestly, even throughout that process, there's been so many different versions of dumplings. Many of them don't use the same like type of pastry. Like I feel like all of these savory parcels had some sort of traditional pastry outside, but we've also made so many different dumplings that have been made with maybe a more Chinese style like wheat or rice wrapper, like momos or things like that. So I've eaten so many kinds. But I think if I had to bake something in the tent today, I was debating between two different ones. I was thinking at first, okay, should I stick to my Michigan roots and there's a traditional sort of Upper Peninsula, Northern Michigan pasty that's pretty much a Cornish pasty, but with a little bit of a Michigan spin on it. But I was worried that might be a little bit plain. And so I also thought about doing Jamaican patties, which is something that we've done for one of our family Christmases before. It's something I used to make fairly regularly and I'm comfortable with, but also isn't something I notice any of the bakers doing in the tent. So I thought would be a sort of a fun new thing to throw in there.
What makes up a Jamaican patty?
It's usually just a normal pasty, like sort of, or empanada style of savory parcel. It's usually filled with like Caribbean spiced beef.
Okay.
Usually. And then the pastry itself is usually spiced with like turmeric and other spices, which makes the pastry itself nice and beautifully yellow, but also adds a nice flavor.
So kind of like Louis, right?
Pretty similar, yeah.
Okay.
But with more Caribbean flavors.
That makes sense. I actually did try these recently, and I kind of just had some extra random dough lying around, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try it. Why not? And so I was trying to think of other things I want to eat. I've been eating a lot of the same stuff in quarantine. I'm just like, I don't feel like eating the same things over and over again. So I bought a big chunk of like shoulder roast beef, and I cooked it in an Instant Pot and shredded it, and then added all kinds of vegetables and a sauce from like basically what was a shepherd's pie gravy, and put all that together and put it in a pastry and tried my darndest to seal the pastry, which looks so easy in a video, looks so easy on Bake Off. It is so unbelievably hard.
Really?
I just kind of pushed it all together and pretended that it was a crimp, but it wasn't really that beautiful looking. But it came out golden and crispy. It was very lovely. It was flaky, just like you want it to be. I struggled a bit with making it thin enough that it wasn't stodgy on the inside, but honestly, you eat all the pastry, it tasted good anyway, so I went with it. Wouldn't say it's total success. There's no way I could have made 12 of those in that like hour and a half they had, but it was pretty good all the same.
Do you think that'd be what you would present in the tent, or do you think you'd try something different?
Probably not, only because it took 90 minutes just to cook the beef.
Woof.
And so it would be like it was kind of a slow cooker thing that I wanted to try because I had plenty of time, but something I couldn't really do in the time because you wouldn't be able to, slow cook anything in that time.
Right.
They had an hour and 3/4. There's no way.
Yeah.
But I did find a couple recipes that looked really interesting, and I found one that I thought you might actually like too. So the one I liked was a spinach ricotta and caramelized onions. savory parcel.
Ooh, that sounds so good.
I recently discovered chicken sausage, and so I thought like adding chicken sausage to that might be really good too.
Mm-hmm.
I found this recipe and immediately thought of you. It was a pesto and goat's cheese savory parcel.
Yum.
And you could like add vegetables to it. That would be something you would go for.
Yeah. Sun-dried tomatoes would be perfect in that with
So
some pine
pestos,
nuts.
goat cheese, pine nuts, and sun-dried tomatoes.
Oh, yum.
Just giving you some little inspiration, Mel.
Wow. Oh, now I'm hungry. Okay.
But moving from the super friendly savory parcels, everyone's had them, to the literally no one's heard of them. The Kouign
Kouign
Amann.
Amann. I have actually had one of these before.
You've had it.
Yeah. I ordered it on a whim at a local bakery, and it has since become one of my favorite things to order. They're usually pretty cheap to get because they're fairly simple. But do you remember how I said that pie crust is my very favorite part of the pie?
Yes.
Kouign Amann to me is like eating a sugary caramelized piece of pie crust, and I love it. Like all
That's
the layers.
Very accurate.
It's so good.
And as we saw in the show, it was basically just like a laminated pastry that had a bunch of sugar in it. But oh my god, that in combination with the sugar, you're already getting like, if you like a lamination is something you'd make in like a croissant, and you get those beautiful flaky layers. Then to add sugary caramel in between, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. The sugar, because you just put the sugar just on it, but then while it bakes, it combines with the butter and just like turns into this sort of crisp, crackly, caramely outside that then you sort of like bite through to get to the soft layers in the middle. It's heaven. I cannot recommend this enough. It's so simple, but so good.
I actually made this week, and despite a couple of strange disasters, it turned out surprisingly well. I gotta say, she's 100% correct. These are beautiful. The part you don't see in the show that I kind of wish they'd shown, if you open them up, you get this little pool of like liquid sugar on the inside. Ooh, so good. So good.
Yum. What were you said you had some mishaps? What happened?
I really am really bad at pastry. I don't know really what went wrong. I think it might have been the recipe I was using.
Could it have been that the butter was too cold, Nick? I'm throwing you under the bus here. I know,
that
you
wrong.
were complaining about this. Yeah.
So I used a recipe from PBS. It was from Bake Off, so I was kind of hoping it'd be basically what the bakers did. But they mix up the dough and then they let it rise at room temperature. But then the butter is like really, really cold. And the whole point of lamination is you want the butter and the dough to be really cold at all times. Except knowing the recipe said to like chill the dough down or to like let it rise in the refrigerator or whatever. So when I was trying to fold the super cold butter into the hot, or not hot, but like the room temperature pastry, trying to spread out the butter on the first roll and fold, it just didn't work. It like crumbled and fell apart and got all patchy and splotchy, and bits of the butter broke through the pastry and then kind of had to get folded back in. And they weren't these beautiful, perfect patisserie layered dough, but it came out pretty good. It was not bad in the long run. And I kind of cobbled together an idea from a famous chef who makes them, Dominique Ansel, who sells them in, I think, New York. And he puts like sugar at the bottom of the base. So I put sugar at the bottom of my muffin tins and baked them like that. So they even had like caramel on the bottom too. It was very good.
Yum. It's weird to me that the recipe didn't tell you to like bring the butter up a little, because you don't want the butter so soft, but you definitely don't want it refrigerator cold either if your dough is at room temp.
I mean, yeah, that's the thing. And so some recipes would say like put it in the freezer. Some would say keep them all in the fridge. I mean, I feel like the idea is that you do want them to be around the same temperature. And even if they were freezing cold, if they were the same temperature, it'd be fine, but they weren't.
Yeah.
And so it just didn't work out super well. I would, however, make these again, despite my usual hatred of pastry.
Yeah,
I think I want to try these again.
Make these. If you make them, let me know. Maybe this is something that we can do together, because really making them is just an excuse to eat a whole batch of them at one time, which is exactly what I want to be doing right now.
It's kind of exactly what you should be doing anyway, because they're okay if you reheat them, but you need to eat them the same day because they're perfect right when they come out of the oven, and then after that they decline real quick. So we need to get all our friends together. We'll bake some pastry together, and then we'll gorge.
Oh, it sounds so good. This, I think, is one of the episodes, like, obviously I enjoy the bakes in every episode, but this episode in particular, I want to just devour everything that everybody made. Like, I feel like there's rarely an episode where every single challenge I'm like, that's exactly what I want to eat. But this week was that, and I'm having a really hard time. I'm struggling to stay focused because all I can think about now is how much I want to eat a Kouign Amann right now.
There is one more left out in the kitchen, and I'm craving it so hard right now.
Just throw it in the freezer and then mail it to me. Could you imagine the sorry shape it would be in when it arrived here in Michigan?
No.
Like, womp, womp, womp.
It's getting hot in Boston. It'd be melted. It would be awful.
Ugh. I'll just make my own, I guess.
There's not that many ingredients, so I'm sure you can make it on your own.
Even though I have tried this bake, I knew nothing about it and barely. The only reason I knew how to pronounce it when I ordered it in the bakery that first time is because they had a handy dandy little pronunciation like label attached.
You weren't like Nancy and said Kougin Amann?
Kougin Amann. No, they had a little thing that said Kouign Amann or Kouign Amann or right there, which was handy. But besides that, I didn't know anything else about them. But that's what we're learning about this week. And as always, I'm incredibly curious and can't wait for you to get started.
So let's talk about what the heck a Kouign Amann is and where it comes from. So yes, as you said, it's basically it's Queen, or I think Paul says as Kouign Amann, which might kind of sound French because it's from France.
Is it really?
But the history goes way further back than that.
Okay, I'm ready.
So basically, as I said, it's a laminated dough. You're creating lots of really thin layers before adding some sugar, folding it up, and baking them in muffin tins. That's what we saw in the show, was this kind of crumpled up version of a Kouign Amann. However, technically, that's not a traditional Kouign Amann. So Kouign Amann is a Breton word or language from a part of France called Brittany that means cake. So Kouign is cake, and Amann meaning butter or butter cake.
Oh.
So they're normally produced with bread dough in these large rounds, like a big flaky caramel cake that's then cut into diamonds and served as one big like pie.
Like an elephant ear. I'm imagining an elephant ear, but fancier in French. Those like big flat fried pieces of dough covered in cinnamon sugar that you get at like a fair or at like oh my gosh, Nick, have you never had an element? Okay, wait.
Hold on.
Pause the
hold
podcast.
on.
You need to look these up. I cannot believe you've
ear?
never heard of an elephant ear.
Do I even look up?
Elephant ear pastry.
So there's just fried dough.
It's just fried dough, and it's usually covered in, like, you can get it covered in powdered sugar or cinnamon sugar or, like, syrup.
This is such a wild, I
cannot believe. Maybe this is just a weird Midwestern, like, all the, like, if you're gonna go to, like, a fair or if there's, like, even I think the, like, adventure, like, the theme parks have them.
So what it is we definitely have fried dough. We would never refer to them as elephant ears. That's the most wild idea
What do
I've
you
ever
call
heard.
them?
Just fried dough. That's all it is.
Oh, I guess that is right. I have seen
put
the little
cinnamon or
fried
sugar on
dough
them.
carts in the commons.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we
like
call them elephant ears.
I was like, sure, Mallory, whatever you say. I have
Whatever
no
you
clue what
say.
she's talking about.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Well-
no. Okay. So kind of similar to that, but it, like, imagine it like if it's baked in like a cake tin.
Okay.
Where you get slices of it, like a triangle of Kouign Amann.
I love how this podcast is not only a really good representation of the cultural differences between the UK and the US, but also between the East Coast and the
three
Midwest.
states between Massachusetts and Michigan.
Yeah, it's wild. Okay, so like an elephant ear, but in a cake tin that you can slice.
In a cake tin. Kind of like that. But I mean,
Covered
think
in
layers.
butter.
Lots of sugar and layers, butter, that kind of thing. So I learned that actually the little cup-sized ones that we saw in the episode would be known as queenettes, which is such a cute word. Yeah, there's too many vowels
Little
in that word, but
cakes.
you know, little queenettes, little butter cakes. Or yeah, little cakes actually, yeah. And so I've seen the pinched ones, which is like what we saw in the episode. We get the little four-leaf clover look. Though I've seen some that are like round, like kind of just like a spin, and it looks really pretty and precise. Again, not quite a real Kouign Amann, but they look really cool. And so you may have heard, I think Mel talks about it and Sue talks about it a little bit, that these are Breton pastries. I don't think any of the contestants knew what Breton was or what Breton meant. Mel did a little bit where she tried to talk about it, and then Sue walked away. So we didn't get to see what the heck Breton meant.
Yeah,
But I'm here to tell you.
I'm so ready.
So starting way, way back, the modern-day Brittany Peninsula, thinking of France like a hexagon's little part that juts out into the Atlantic Ocean below Britain on the northwest shore.
You've already lost me. Wait, I'm Googling a picture of France.
That's the general Breton area known as Brittany and was first settled by Neanderthals.
Oh, what?
One of the world's oldest hearths was found in Plouginic Finistère. Let's hope I said that right. Is over 450,000 years old.
Wow.
This sounds kind of unimportant, but it'll come back to Finistère in a sec.
Okay.
Moving forward, this area was inhabited by the Celts in prehistory, aka the time when they weren't writing down their own history, but others would refer to them. This area became known as Armorica, and Sidney McElroy's favorite historian,
Aw.
Pliny the Elder,
Oh, yeah.
would eventually write about the Roman invasion of the Celtic cultures.
Isn't he Pliny? Not to burst your bubble.
No, it is Pliny. I think it is Pliny.
It's Pliny?
I could be wrong.
Oh, not to burst my own bubble.
I think I looked it up on Wikipedia.
This is like Nick is 2 for 2 now on me thinking I know my shit about pronunciation and then just getting
So yeah, it's
absolutely
Pliny.
shot down.
P as in pie, L as in, I as in kit, and then the Y as in happy.
I spent my whole life thinking it was Pliny.
I think they said it as Pliny to begin with, and then got it wrong as well. Unless Wikipedia is wrong, who knows?
Oh boy.
I'm gonna say Pliny because that's how they say it in literally every episode. So we're gonna start there.
Ugh, I believe you.
So Pliny the Elder read about how Rome invaded these Celtic Gaulish cultures. Armorica comes from the Gaulish words for at or by the sea.
Descriptive.
And so that whole Brittany Peninsula where it sticks out into the ocean between the Seine and the Loire was what they referred to as Armorica. And so in his book, Natural History, written around 79 AD, Pliny stated that Armorica covered the entire coast down to the Pyrenees because of its word for, by the sea. However, he did also write about how in 56 AD, 56 CE, if we're getting classy, Julius? No, I'm just making... Yeah, Julius Caesar. Okay, I thought I was wrong.
Yeah, Julius
Just
Caesar.
Orange Julius? I don't know. In
LOL.
56,
Oh my God.
in 56 CE, Julius invaded Armorica and it became part of the Roman Empire. So
You can say Caesar. No, I'm just giving you
God
shit.
damn
I'm sorry.
Rome took over the developing area.
Orange Julius took over Brittany. He did it.
Oh, Lord.
With lots of delicious Slurpees. I don't even know what Orange Julius does.
What is...
Sorry, I'm done now.
So Orange Julius took over Armorica. It became part of the Roman Empire. And they began trying to convert the native Celts, or the Gaulish people, into Christianity. However, it wasn't until several centuries later, during the, I think it's either the 400s or 500s, when Britons, Britons, fled from what's now modern-day Wales into this area, and this is where the name Breton comes from. So Britain slowly, I don't know if devolved is the right word, but it became Breton through the years. And so...
So wait, let me clarify. It was originally inhabited by, well, first of all, Neanderthals, but then later these...
So Celts were was the name for the people who were basically just naturally living in that area.
Right.
Yes.
Indigenous to France. And then it was occupied by Rome. And then later occupied by immigrants from Wales.
Yes. So they were fleeing from, I think not quite, there was an invasion in their area. So they were fleeing from their homes in the Great Britain area.
Refugees from Wales.
And they moved over to what is now France.
So Brittany got its name from Britain, like UK, Ireland, Wales. Okay.
The wording kind of changes. So at that time those people were referred to as Britons, Briton, and through the years that became Breton to be differentiated from the Brits, obviously. And this is the part of history gets real confusing for me because I'm not very good at history, so I'm not sure why I went into this, but I just thought...
Wait, you tell me this now? We're 7 episodes in, Nick.
I'm not really great at history. However, this is the more interesting parts of where Brittany comes up. So it was part of England for a while, then it became part of France for a while, and then it kind of had its own independence for a long time, formally integrated into the country of France in the 1500s. So they enjoyed a long time of just kind of being independent, their own little area.
Like the Texas of France.
Sure, yes. So they're their own little thing. And they didn't really integrate into French culture until the 19th century. So they were developing their own culture for a long time.
That's really cool.
And they developed their own language. So kind of like historical Irish, how it's not really the national language, but it's still spoken by the people in those areas. The Breton language, which I'm not totally sure I think it's just Breton in English, but Breshonig in their language is this endangered language where Kouign Amann comes from.
Wow.
So it's similar to French. This is the part I really want to talk about because it's really nerdy. When Martha talks about this, she tries to pronounce it and says Kouign Amann and then says Kouign Amann, which if you look at the subtitles, they spell A-M-A-N-T, which if this were French, that's how you pronounce that word is Amand. You wouldn't pronounce the N-T at the end. You have the really kind of that French sound. And so it's like French, but really Bresonnais is more like Welsh or Cornish.
Oh.
Just like stuck there on the corner of France. You have this kind of bizarre language. They do also speak another language there called Gallo, which is again from their time being part of Gaul and that influence.
Wow.
So let me try out a little bit of my Bresonnais that I learned on the YouTubes. Demain. Penoise manquant.
Oui, mon ami. I don't know what you did. I have no idea what's going on.
I think I just said hello, how are you?
Oh.
But it sounds, look this up.
Okay, I will. I'm obsessed with
the
languages. I love them. I think they're so neat.
It is a very bizarre sounding language and it's very, very cool. But also the way they write it out, you're like, those aren't what you're not saying those letters. Why are those letters there? Which is pretty much what French is anyway.
Wow.
So moving on. Remember how I said Finistère would be important?
Yes.
The origin stories of like the OG Kouign Amann are a little bit fuzzy. Some say it's a coincidence that a baker ran out of desserts and then improvised with some leftover bread dough and plenty of sugar, while others claim that it was an invention of a female chef in Serres, though no one really knows for sure. However, the city of Douarnenez has made the claim that only they know the right way to make a Kouign Amann. And where is Douarnenez? It is in Finistère. And so Finistère has become like this epicenter for quote unquote proper Kouign Amann.
Wow.
So far as to make the Kouign Amann of Douarnenez Association.
That's so cool.
So do you know what an IGP is?
Should I?
If you like champagne.
No.
Or certain cheeses.
Ooh.
Or wines. The IGP is an Indication Géographique Protégée. Or basically, it's this little like stamp that says like this is official food from this part of the world.
Yes, I did know that without context.
Yes.
It's a weird acronym.
So yeah, it's a weird acronym. It's in French. It doesn't really help. But as I said, champagne has an IGP.
Right.
Because really, technically, only champagne made in Champagne is real champagne.
Yeah, same way with like the cheese like used on a Neapolitan like traditional pizza. There's all sorts of very specific.
These protections are made to help food producers like almost copyright their work kind of thing.
Yeah, like a cultural copyright.
Exactly. And so they've made this association in Douarnenez that is trying to get basically this for the Kouign Amann.
Wow. Has it happened yet or is it still in process?
Not quite. They have a whole like logo and everything, but I'm not sure it's technically an IGP yet because they're now made all over the world. However, the president of this association, Alain Lebert, is trying to bring back the importance of his region of Douarnenez and Finistère and claim like what is a true Kouign Amann from its original area.
So what are his
criteria?
What's his checklist? Yeah, his criteria for perfect Kouign Amann.
So the real Kouign Amann of Douarnenez is different from other cakes by, this is directly from his website, its quality. The percentage of the butter and sugar is clearly different. It is only made day of. So the whole idea like eating it in the same day is super important.
Mm-hmm.
It is caramelized. It has an overcooked appearance due to caramelization, and this has an influence on the taste, therefore it is necessary. It is a flaky, soft, melting in the mouth. Its presentation, scoring with a blade or knife, is done in rhombus, or I guess we'd probably say in like diamond shape, which gives it a semblance of scales due to the caramelization of the crust. Now here's my favorite part of this, and I need to just quote from Food 52, who talks about this too, because they have a great way of saying this. This article says, also, they explain, it should be presented right side up, not upside down, as in some other cities that are not Douarnenez.
Whoa.
In English, those are what we'd call fighting words, which I think is the best way to say it because they emphasize some other cities.
Do they name drop those other cities?
They do not.
They subtweet those cities?
They do not. They just say like, other places that aren't Douarnenez, they do sac. So I mentioned Dominique Ansel. He makes these in a way that he presents them upside down so you can see the crispy sugar on the bottom. And so they're saying, no, that's not a proper Kouign Amann.
That's not legit.
You're wrong.
Wow.
Also, along with his criteria is the Kouign Amann of Douarnenez that which is made by the artisans of Douarnenez is manufactured as it originally was made in the 1860s. That is to say, from traditional bread dough, which is actually really interesting because we think of it as a pastry, not as a bread.
Well, the bakers rose their dough.
But yeah, that's
so.
where the yeast comes from. So it's not quite a traditional pastry. And I will tell you, the technical details, which could seem trivial to you, have considerable importance to us Douarnenists. Also, he goes on to say that Kouign Amann of Douarnenez is made plain. There is no need to add apples, strawberries, pineapple, or for some reason he says seaweed. Natural is so much better. So they are very, very protective of their Kouign Amann.
Love it. Into it. One of my favorite desserts.
It's pretty spectacular.
Please try some.
Some other fun facts about Brittany while we're here. I wanted to mention these because it's a fun area. So the Brittany Peninsula is pockmarked with all these like coastlines. They go in and out, in and out. It actually covers 1/3 of the French coastline in just Brittany alone.
Whoa.
Brittany is not only known for pastry, but for 2 different kinds of animals. A Breton horse, which is beautiful, a type of draft horse, and this super cute dog called a Brittany gun dog or a Brittany spaniel. Malory, you're watching on the little slideshow. You'll see a picture of this dog. It is perfect. They're also known for this weird furniture called a box bed or a lit clos in French, or closed beds in Brittany. So these are traditional furniture pieces that were raised boxes with like a fully enclosed bed, like you're like locking yourself in a cabinet.
Hi, this is my worst nightmare.
Yeah, right? Like this,
I would get so claustrophobic.
I got a panic attack from sleeping on like the bed above the driver's seat in an RV. Like I could not do this. These are like in single room houses.
Somebody could lock you in.
I'm sure they weren't actually locked, but they were just little cabinets.
I would worry about it.
So in single room houses back in the medieval ages, these would give privacy and warmth, plus protection from animals and dirty floors.
This makes sense
in context. They were highly decorated, and they look pretty gorgeous. But yeah, in context, makes so much sense, right? But before the days when we had like very clean interiors and, you know, what do you call this? Whatever.
I have no idea what you're referring to right now.
I was trying to think of the word for the walls they're made from.
Interior walls?
No. Never mind. I'll watch HGTV later.
Okay.
But in the medieval era, before, you know, a traditional bed like we think of today was important.
If you're in a 1-bedroom house and also your family is huge because there wasn't any birth control, like I would also probably want to enclose myself within a small box away from my family.
I mean, they did also talk about how like sometimes they were double layers.
I say this during quarantine with my family.
Yeah, I mean, that's awkward. Sometimes they were double layered, so you'd put like kids up on the upper bunks and you on the bottom bunks, which doesn't sound great. So a lot of these were gorgeous. They were beautifully decorated, and every house had them. Unfortunately, that meant that some of them ended up in museums, and then most of them were converted into cabinets and bookcases and TV cabinets and all that jazz. However, there are a few places that still make these, and a company called Ronan and Erwin Burlek still makes a modern version of this, which, again, you can see a little photo of. It's this like wonky, modern, like raised bed situation. It's kind of cool. Kind of close you out from the world while you're in bed. So Brittany also has ties to the Matter of Britain and King Arthur. So locations of Brittany are supposedly the Lady of the Lakes Lake and Merlin's gravesite are in Brittany. Also, Asterix, the comic book, takes place in Julius Caesar's Armorica.
Wow. Nick, do you know who I'm named after?
Mallory. Oh,
I'm named after.
You said this. Hold on. Is it? Oh, it's like King Arthur's wife or something.
I'm named after the guy who wrote The Death of King Arthur, the OG book about King Arthur, Sir Thomas Malory.
Oh, that's so much cooler than I remembered it.
King
Yes,
Arthur's wife.
But no, wait, who is it?
So Sir Thomas Malory wrote Le Mort d'Arthur. I can't speak any French.
Let me look it up and I'll say it out for you.
Thank you. I had no idea that took place in Brittany. The Lady of the
Le Mort d'Arthur.
Oh, thank you. God, so much better. Jesus Christ.
So yeah, the death of King Arthur, or the death of Arthur.
Yeah, it's like his sort of like the fake biography of King Arthur.
Well, evidently you have ties to Brittany as well, Malory.
Dope. Wow, who knew?
Like by weird connection, but you know, it works.
I would have never expected this. coming out of this episode. Man, that's a pretty neat revelation.
I did also think I should mention that in the episode, they talk about the Breton coif, which is a real thing and looks really gorgeous and elegant, but is very confusing. They have a lot of bagpipes because they have a lot of like British and Welsh and Scottish influence. There's dancing and all kinds of crazy mix of modern and classic.
Wow. I love when cultures get kind of isolated like this and get to experience this like beautiful cultural. I've been Google imaging pretty much this whole time that you've been talking, so I can look all these things up. The Breton coif is amazing.
Right? Isn't it perfect?
I love it.
I couldn't even find like an
Wow.
answer of like why it's a thing, but it just looks great.
It looks beautiful. Ugh, I'm so into this now. I literally did not know that this place existed before this episode, and now I'm absolutely entirely obsessed with it.
Well, out of episode 3000 or whatever it is, we'll get a chance to go visit Brittany, I think,
Oh man, my dream.
at some point.
Once we can go any place.
Anywhere,
Again.
literally anywhere.
Once I can leave my house, I'll go to Brittany.
Or we can go out and find like a Boston place that sells Kouign Amann, and you can show me the
Kouign Amann.
proper. Anyway, getting back to food.
I've seen Oh, okay. You can buy it. I've seen them at what's that fancy? Oh, it's got an annoying name that we always mispronounce. Tate.
Oh yes, I don't think it's
They
tate,
sell
but
Kouign
sure.
It's definitely Tate because it's not fucking tot.
I think it's
It's Tatte.
yeah, but it's French.
Tot.
Yeah, there's no accent. It's just tot.
Okay. Wait.
Okay, time to Google it. We're Googling it.
Yeah.
What? No, it's not tate. Excuse you, Food Lens. That's wrong.
Yeah. Tate.
That's
Okay. Listen, I'm 1 for 3. I finally got it.
there's
My coworkers have been. I mean, we go there like once a week.
no. That's
Yeah.
wrong.
Tate.
Wait, is that even French? No, it isn't. I guess.
No, it's just a word like latte, but tate. Schooled.
I refuse to refer it as tate. It's a GIF. It's a tot. I'm not saying it.
I'm just glad that I'm finally correct about one of the pronunciations. I've been wrong about everything else
Pliny,
so far.
la mort d'auteur.
What was the other one that we were a few episodes ago and you put it in the end bit? You said it had a cuss sound in it. It was the one that like Ben was on my side too, and then you looked it up and we were both wrong.
Oh, facsimile.
Oh yeah, I thought it was facsimile. God, ugh. There's so many words that like I think I read too much, but I don't hear things out loud, and so there's so many words that I've read and made assumptions about how they should be said, and then I say them out loud on this public podcast that is released to many people, and then you immediately school me and tell me how wrong I am.
I'm sure you've taught me lots of other things that I mean, I just said you were King Arthur's wife or something.
Wife.
So
Which do you, Guinevere?
Guinevere, fuck. That's totally right. I knew that, didn't I? Anyway, getting back to the food. So the traditional drink of Brittany is cider, often drunk in bowls, or really what's really mugs.
Yum.
But other Breton dishes include things like crepes and galettes, so sweet and savory
Yum,
respectively. Galettes being like buckwheat pancakes outside of France.
Oh,
So think those like
delicious.
dark brown savory pancakes. These are often served with like sausage and stuff. That's what's popular in Brittany.
Yum.
Also, if you like prunes, the far breton is a sort of like sweet suet pudding cake combination. Looks very cool.
Can't get behind this one.
I just don't like prunes.
Yeah, not my fave.
Well, maybe one day.
You do you, Breton.
We'll do it with raisins or something. Anyway, there ends my very long history of Brittany.
This was something that I was mildly excited going into this because I didn't know anything about it, but because I didn't know anything about it, I didn't know how excited I should be. And wow, this one blew my socks off, Nick.
I thought it was pretty
I
cool.
learned about the origin of my name. It doesn't get cooler than that.
It really doesn't. I mean, if we can find a Nicholas pastry, we'll get into that later, but maybe not. And I think I was really lucky for thinking of this because we're not going to get a chance to do like a Breton pastry in the future, really. So I thought it was better than going to Eclairs or into savory parcels. We'll do those again in the future for sure.
Yeah.
I do really want to learn about the history or like the cultural significance of savory parcels in the future.
I think we really already covered it in pie, though, is that it's just really easy and you get yummier food when you cover your meat in dough. You know, the juices stay inside instead of leaking out. And it's also really easy to cook. I haven't done any research about this. It's just a weird pile of cultural assumptions in a trench coat. But my assumption is because they're so easy, like if you think about Mel carrying them in her pocket. Seems to me like a very working class food, like really easy to prepare, easy to store, easy to carry with you to work as a quick lunch. Like this just seems like old school, easy way to eat that can be easily embellished and made delicious, however your culture defines that. So I think that's sort of why we get the just like beautiful rainbow of savory parcels across the world.
I think that kind of tracks for the Kouign Amann as well. It's a fairly simple recipe that you can really master and make into something that's really amazing. And people who know about the croissant, they know about a bunch of other kind of pastries. They don't really know about the Kouign Amann.
Yeah.
And it could easily be someone's new favorite thing.
Yeah.
So listeners, if you see it out there in the world at a tate, try it out because it's really, really good. I highly recommend.
Yeah.
Tate. Ugh, God. Okay. Moving on. It is time for tea.
Wash it. Wash that pronunciation out of your mouth with a bit of tea.
Okay. You actually have tea today? What you
I
drinking?
do have tea today. I think it's rooibos.
You think? Just grabbed
And
one.
also, this is another pronunciation.
Oh.
Rooibos.
I have no idea how to pronounce that one. I'm not going to even guess.
I looked it up.
You
I
looked it
looked
up?
this one up before. Yeah. Because it's like one of my mom's favorite teas, and I've been calling it like rooibos for like years. And then I looked it up. It's rooibos.
It's rooibos?
Yeah, I think it's like
Or something,
the
some
South
variation
African
of that.
word.
It's awful. Anyway, I'm not drinking tea. I forgot to do something before recording, so I didn't get a chance to make tea. It was very upsetting. However, also forgot about something last week. And last week's episode was what I believe is the beginning of the Curse of the Star Baker.
Oh, yeah.
So I totally forgot to say this last week, and I thought it was really cool. Not cool at all. But, it was something that they mentioned kind of in passing and becomes such a big thing. This idea of the Curse of the Star Baker, where you're a Star Baker one week, and then the next week you come in, you like fall to the bottom of the rankings.
Yeah.
I feel so bad, but it's kind of true.
Yeah.
And it showed up in last week's episode where no one went home, but Kate and Richard were not doing well.
Yeah, I think Chetna did a fairly good job this week, but you're definitely right. And it's funny they mention it as something that like people have been talking about. It definitely comes into play more later. And I think it's just that sort of psychological concept of once you get confident, you start to slip up, and it demands that focus to just continue to perform.
Oh, definitely.
Is my guess.
It's rough, or I'm sure we could get a psychiatrist in here to talk about this if we really, really want to talk about this. It would be fascinating to think about like what that kind of manifests as. Is it like the idea that, you've done so much now, how are you going to top that? How are you going to keep getting better? Or is it something beyond that?
Like, oh, I'm safe. I made it. I was Star Baker.
Exactly.
And then the next week you're like, wow.
Or do you try to do something
idea.
better than you did so you don't settle for something that normally you shoot a little high? Yeah, exactly. So there's probably so many factors.
I was going to say I've never baked under pressure before, but that's a lie. I've never baked under external pressure. All of the pressure is me.
Oh, no. I mean, there's baking competitions in the world. We should enter one of those at some point. See how it goes.
It would be my worst nightmare. I love this show so much. I would panic every day if I were on it. I'm such a like perfectionist, especially with regards to like things that I'm like presenting to others. I have so much respect for all the bakers who are on here. And also Kate in this episode, we were talking about it. Nothing really goes her way this episode. Her poise and elegance throughout this whole episode, I would have been in tears.
Yeah.
Like I have so much respect for her and for the other bakers who have had to say goodbye, even though they're clearly very talented at what they do, but just because it wasn't quite on par with everybody else in the tent, like woof. I'm just like not.
If I even had the talent enough to get on the show and have good enough baking, I would not handle the stress at all. I'm not very good when I'm angry. And like, even when I'm low blood sugar, I'm just like, I'm gonna throw something across the room. Like, I can't handle the stress.
I'm gonna throw my baked Alaska in the bin.
I don't think I'd ever do that. I would just be like, this is awful. I hate everything. Bye, world. But you listener, you are not under a time crunch. You are not being judged. We want to see your beautiful, beautiful desserts or your beautiful disasters. Either way, let us know. #HotBevPod. I want to see them. Okay? Bake for us. Shall we move on?
That brings us to the final challenge of this week, which is the showstopper. Something I was very excited to bake and also love to watch be produced by the bakers as well. And that is Eclairs, and specifically 2 types. And this one was fun. I think we had we talked a bit about this in the previous week because like Chouxs is obviously like classified as a pastry, but that was kind of confusing to me because I so associate pastry with like some form of lamination where you're layering fat in with the flour. But I was thinking about it, and I was actually starting to think about it once I did the little lesson on leaveners, and I realized that all of them rise with steam. steam. I remember I mentioned that like pastry, like traditional pie dough or laminated dough, you're creating steam by layering the fat in the dough. But choux, you're creating that steam in a different way. You're basically creating this like big gelatinous ball that you cook the flour in and then you slowly add eggs to and stir that a lot until it sort of forms this blobby deliciousness that will then like capture the steam and expand really fast in the oven. It's just my weird epiphany that I had recently.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. Like, it is like, is this a pastry? I mean, yes, evidently, but they looked gorgeous, Malory.
Thank you. And I loved, okay, it was so much fun. I do love when the showstopper is sort of required to be something a little bit more delicate because I think you just really get beautiful designs from them. And I think that was definitely the case here. I think my favorites this week were Nancy's savory and sweet eclairs. I love the idea of doing some sort of salmon or like lox eclair. I thought that would be delicious. Louis' PB&J and blueberry ones look delicious. I didn't love the decoration on them. They were like a little bit too garish for me, but like also they look tasty. So I don't know which is better there. And then obviously Chetna's chocolate and mango and lemon meringue. Those looked beautiful and just are flavors that I would love to eat. They look like works of art. I was so impressed.
I totally agree with you. And I gotta say, as you said, it's so easy to make a choux look delicate and beautiful with just some simple decorations. Oh, I was real upset that Kate's didn't work out super well because, again, she just was struggling all day, but her flavor combination sounded really, really nice.
Yeah.
And Martha's evidently did not come out the way they wanted to, and she made it through, but she had a really good idea that just didn't come across, evidently.
Yeah, and at the same time as easy, theoretically, like, I wouldn't say necessarily that it's easy to make them look beautiful and delicate. I would say that there's a plethora of ways with which you could do that.
Yeah,
but
that's what I
I
meant.
think it's
Thank
also
you.
just as easy to to make them look messy because they're such a delicate pastry. You have to kind of be like delicate with them. Like you can't just like slather frosting on them or pile them up with things. You kind of have to be a little bit gentle, and that's what I learned when I made them. But having made them, I'm obsessed. I would definitely do it again. Choux is not as intimidating as it sort of was communicated to me that it would be.
This is definitely one of those ones that people are like, they're going to mess up really hard, or these are very hard things to do, and you didn't find that at all?
Yeah. I mean, I before I bake anything, I do a lot of research.
Good.
And I think that definitely helped. I used kind of two different recipes. Food 52 had a Eclairs recipe and Bon Appetit had an Eclairs recipe. And I read a bunch of others before sort of landing on those two. But then I sort of read a bit of the science behind like why you need Eclairs to do certain things. And I think for me, always having that context really helps me understand what I'm looking for as I proceed through the bake. And yeah, mine could have been a little bit more neat. I think that's for sure. I think they would have risen a little bit better if I had put a tiny bit more egg in. But for the first time, like that was the first time I'd ever made choux, and it turned out really well. It was beautifully crispy on the outside, a little bit of stretch in the middle, and it was really easy to cut. Plenty of airspace for the creme pat I made, which was also, I think it was the first time that I made creme pat. My two flavors were a coffee eclair. So I did a coffee creme pat, and then I topped it with a Kahlua and chocolate ganache and some crumbled walnuts.
Ooh.
I know. I did sort of like a breakfast beverage duo and did an Earl Grey eclair. So it was Earl Grey creme pat and then a lavender glaze, which I decorated with like little violets that I had picked. So that was fun.
Did you use actual Earl Grey tea in the creme pat?
Yeah. So to make creme pat, you warm up milk and then sort of like slowly stream eggs and other bits in.
Other bits. How,
other
how
bits.
official.
But when I was sort of first initially like boiling or simmering, getting the milk up to a simmer, I had thrown in 2 Earl Grey packets and just like brought those up to the simmer with the milk so that it would better, I guess, disperse its flavor.
So did you do something similar with the coffee where you just like brewed coffee in the milk?
Yeah, I didn't have any sort of instant espresso powder, although that would have probably been significantly easier. I actually just subbed out some of the milk for some coffee that I'd actually cooked down and reduced.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I just like had coffee, didn't think it would be strong enough to impart the flavor that I was looking for, and cooked it and reduced it by half, subbed that out for part of the milk. And that one ended up being a little bit slacker because of that substitution. Really happy with it. Because I was a little bit intimidated by it, I made very sure to have sort of all of my procedures down pat before starting. Very much everything was like ready to go. And then when I was ready to decorate, I had like all of my little assembly lines set up, and that helped a ton.
You ready for some more French, Malory?
Oh, yeah, mise en place.
There
That
we
one
go,
I know,
mise
but I
en place.
butcher. Is it? Am I saying it correctly?
You are. You said it perfectly correct.
Wow, that's a surprise. I always say it, and then but I mumble it. I always go, yeah, I love doing mise en place.
No.
Yeah, I think mise en place is like key to feeling joy while you're baking.
It is kind of that nice little, like, you got all the little bowls of all the ingredients, like you're in a cooking show, and you get everything all prepared. It just feels nice.
It's so true. And I think this is actually a very valuable tip for our listeners. If you are somebody who is intimidated by baking or unsure about, like, just feel overwhelmed once you start to bake, the key is, like, this has completely changed my relationship with cooking. It's changed my relationship with baking. Having all of the ingredients measured out, ready to go in their bowls of whatever needs to be added at certain times. And sort of you can, like, line those up in order so that you can, like, just reach for them and they're there when you need them. That way you can time everything else so much easier. It relieves so much stress. You're not, like, worrying about, oh, now I have to measure butter while you're in the middle of melting something else. Like, it's already done. I'm sure that's, I mean, most the people I know practice that, but if you don't and want to try, it makes a huge difference.
I could certainly get better, so I'll work on that for sure. Half of my time in the kitchen is just running to grab things or putting things back while I'm, like, waiting for things to work. It's not good.
And also, if you think about, like, how you want everything to really be pretty much room temperature when you start baking with it. Like, you want eggs to be room temp, you want butter to be room temp, because the chemistry of it all works so much better. Unless under special circumstances when instructed, obviously you'll have to use certain things cold. Have it all set out. Get yourself a bunch of little bowls. It'll change your life. Not to be dramatic.
I also can't move on without mentioning we no longer have
Norman,
but we do have the Eclairs stare.
Yeah.
Because Richard made an Eclairs stare for his Eclairs, which is such a tongue twister, but it was so adorable to see.
Eclairs. Yeah, I love it. Nancy hasn't brought in one of her little torture devices in a long time, but I love it when bakers bring in sort of personalized, whether it's something to display their bakes on or a tool to use to help form their bakes. It's, like, always kind of my favorite part of the episode. You really get a look into the personality of the baker who's doing that.
So I have a quick question for you, having made Eclairs. What is your opinion on filling an Eclair versus topping an Eclair? So some people will cut the Eclair in half and, like, fill the inside with, like, some kind of cream. Whereas people like Nancy would put little holes in the bottom and fill the inside like they're filling up a donut. Is there much of a difference?
Yeah, classic Eclairs go both ways. It really just depends on your preference. I personally cut all mine open because, first of all, it's my first time baking it and I wanted to make sure there was enough room. And then also I just wanted to make sure that I was going to get as much filling as possible into each one. And I think they still look very nice even when they're cut in half. In the future, I'll probably try poking those holes in from the bottom and seeing how that works. I don't think I would dislike it. Yeah, I chose the sort of cut in half method.
Okay. I think going into this episode, I considered an Eclair as, like, the one you fill. But they do still look really beautiful when you're, like, having many layers in there, especially with the more complicated recipes where you're, like, filling, like, 6 different things. You probably want to split them in half anyway. So either size works. Though I have to say, Nancy's little technique of weighing as she filled was the most over-the-top thing I've seen, and also pretty spectacularly a good idea.
If I ever filled my Eclairs without, like, looking at them, that's 100% how I would do it. Because, like, how else do you know how much is getting in there? That's such a good idea. That was genius.
I looked up a couple of recipes for Eclairs, and I do, as you said, I really, really want to try making these now.
You could nail it, Nick. I think this is something that you would really enjoy.
I found some fun recipes that I'm not sure if I would love them, but sounded really good. So last week I did caramel and peanut butter, and I think I'm kind of hooked on that now, because I looked up a recipe for a peanut butter and caramel or a meringue. So, like, that'd be a cool combination.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one that was brown sugar and cinnamon whiskey cream, filling for an Eclair. One that I thought you would like, a rosemary roasted peach with salted caramel.
Oh my God, that sounds so good.
Right?
Wow.
Then other things that I saw online or thought would really, really good was a black forest Eclair. So if you did, like, a chocolate Eclair, I'm sure you could do something really fascinating with that. So my favorite flavor of all time is anything s'more. So I think a s'more Eclair just has to go. I mean,
oh yeah, you could definitely do, like, a yummy, like, burnt meringue.
Yeah.
Like,
there's so many ways that could go well. So I gotta try Eclairs sometime soon. I think sometime when I can actually share them with a bunch of people, I'll definitely make them for sure. True.
I mean, they need a bunch of eggs, but not that much flour at all. Like, you really don't need that much batter to make a bunch of Eclairs because it expands so much. And then you can fill it with whatever you want. So, like, obviously I made a creme pat, which is fairly traditional and actually significantly easier than I thought, but you have to wait for the cool down time. But if you wanted to just do a quick whipped cream or a meringue, like, you can, I mean,
you can go crazy, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that in, quarantine time, it might actually be a good recipe to try, because you said it's not a lot of flour, and you can just fill it with whatever you have around.
Exactly. And if you're not, this is a pro tip. If you're making eclairs, they pretty much, what you want in an eclair is a nice crunch on the outside. You want it to be nice and crispy. And a huge portion of the baking time is really just like getting them nice and dry. If you're going to make them at home and fill them at home, they'll start to get soggy pretty much as soon as they are filled. And so they're another one like the Kouign Amann that you want to eat the same day, or you can freeze both your filling and the pastry sort of separately before they are combined, and then throw the frozen pastry eclairs back into the oven to dry out and warm up, and then fill more once you're ready to eat more.
That's really cool, actually.
Yeah. And it was surprising. I don't know how I want to say this. I didn't want Richard to be star baker.
What? Oh, yeah, right. I don't think I did either. I thought like that some people did a lot better than Richard.
Nancy deserved it.
Really? Nancy?
I think Nancy did a good job. I know they didn't love her savory parcels as much, but she came second on the technical, and also her eclairs. He said they were near perfect. I love Richard. I think Richard did a good job. I think just like his eclairs, okay, they looked slightly disappointing. They weren't like as beautiful as I necessarily wanted them to be. But if you think about his flavor combinations, the fact that he combined lavender and rose in a way that worked successfully for both of them, that's really hard to do. Both of those flavors can be amazing or soapy if used incorrectly. And so I think he did.
Probably what brought him over the top was just that one like
I think
expertise.
He did manage to show, a lot of technique in that final bake that really put him over the edge. So congratulations, Richard. This is like the beginning of the like Richard Star Baker train, right?
Oh, this is not the beginning. This is his third time, I think.
Is this third time?
Yes, this is his third time.
For whatever reason, I like have this memory of him getting it like 3 times in a row, but I think that could just be like my memory.
I think it's another season that
somebody gets it.
Someone gets it like 3 times in a row.
Okay, I like.
It's Ian.
In my memory, that was Richard.
I don't know. Anyway,
is that Rahul?
No. Well, I'm sure he does, but doesn't.
I can't remember.
I forget who it is. We'll
Listener,
get there.
If you know, feel free, tweet us at Hopopod.
Yeah, just let us know all the things we got wrong, okay? If you're from France, like, let us know, because
if you're from France,
you have a cool
tell us
country.
how wrong we're getting your language.
Don't tell me that my German is bad, because I know it's bad. Though Richard is Star Baker again, we had to say goodbye to someone this week. And unfortunately, we had to say goodbye to Kate. Kate, you had such a rough week, but you're such an amazing baker.
Yeah, one of our favorites throughout the series. I think flavors have always been something that are like really accessible, but also really delicious. And I've just enjoyed watching her bake. Like I said, her poise and her elegance throughout this entire episode, and really her just sort of presence throughout the whole show has been such a joy to watch all over again.
You can find her on Instagram and on Twitter as @TreacleBakes. KateHenry.co.uk is her website, where she is now a private chef. She runs cookery classes. She's a food photographer. She has a ton of recipes. If you follow her on Instagram, she has a bunch of keto and low carb or high fat recipes, which as a diabetic, I absolutely love. So I got to go try out her low carb caramel and her low carb bread and all kinds of cool things. She says she's feeling amazing and looking great and eating super great as well. She also competed in the 2019 Great Festive Baking Show, which hopefully we'll cover at some point, where she showed off her restaurant in cake form, along with what I thought was a gorgeous Stalin wreath. So that's a great episode as well. This is something I thought was hilarious from the BBC website. It refers to her as sparky and full of beans.
I'm sure that means something to them.
It means like full of energy, but I think full of beans is a great thing to say. It also goes on to say Kate is a creative baker and treats every bake as an experiment. She very rarely uses recipes or weighs ingredients. She once baked a life-sized Goldfinger Bond girl for her sister's 40th birthday and a full-size 3D sculpture of her friend's head, all from cake. Kate, what?
That's awesome.
What? So they do some pretty spectacular things before they get on the show, and that's pretty awesome. We learned in the show that she has a young daughter, and she runs her own upholstery business, which now she is, she's later trained as a professional chef in London, so she's doing that now, which is pretty cool. But also, which we didn't learn, she trained to be an actress, worked on stage for several years, and did work in marketing and design before ending up in Bake Off.
Wow.
So she's an all-around girl who did amazing things inside the tent and outside. So good job. Hats off to you, Kate Henry.
Hats off to you, Kate. So that brings us to the end of our episode today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that we dough next week justice. It is Advanced Dough Week.
I love it.
Thank you. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, please tell your friends and family to check us out on social media or subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. Every subscription and download helps us out tons.
We would love it if you would tweet about us and share how much you liked our show. You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at HotBowPod, as well as on Facebook at facebook.com/HotBowPod. That's HOTBOPOD. We post pictures of all of our bakes and stuff, so check us out because you want to see the amazing things that Malory and I have made. You can find links to all of our social media accounts, and you can sign up to be notified whenever we release an episode on our website, hotbowpod.com. One last time, HOTBOPOD.com.
The links that we use to make my Eclairs and Nick's Kouign Amann are posted on our website. You can find them by navigating to episodes and then looking for the post for this episode to try them out for yourself. If you do make it, let us know how it went.
I'd also like to give a hats off to Peter Lalish, who wrote our intro and outro music. You can find Peter on Fiverr as PW Lalish, as well as on Bandcamp under the name AKLF. As Richard said, a bit of butter fashion reduces the tension, doesn't it? On your marks.
Get set,
Bake!
And that brings us to the end of our episode today. I haven't looked up upon yet. What's next week? Jesus, this is one slide I didn't look at.
Next week is an advanced dough. Can we think of a dough
Advanced
pun really
dough.
quickly?
Oh wait, I have it bookmarked. I have a dough pun bookmarked.
Of course you do.
So much pressure.
Dun, 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 dun,
Okay,
dun,
wait.
dun, dun.
No, I hate that. Wait. Okay, we could do like or dough, like what dough you mean, or dough away with dough it. I hope we dough it justice.
Yes, do it.
Okay,
Sorry,
great.
dough it. Want to start over the slide?